1955 to 1975. 20 long years. The Vietnam War was one of the most complex and contentious conflicts in modern history. It was a struggle not just of armies, but ideologies and nations. From daunting airstrikes to conducting covert riverine operations, history paints the U.S. Navy's involvement as a decisive affair. But was that actually the case? Today we'll be peeling back the layers and dividing it into the incredible stories of the naval ships that sailed to the heart of the conflict. We'll go over their interesting designs, cool weapons, dangerous missions, and all of their flaws to uncover the untold tales of naval heroism and innovation that helped shape the course of the Vietnam War. Make no mistake, sailing on a Navy ship during this perilous time was by no means easy. It was dangerous. It was intense. It was challenging. The sailors? Total war heroes. They had to face frequent combat, especially those on aircraft carriers, riverine patrol boats, and destroyers. These vessels also took part in all kinds of operations, such as search and rescue missions, supporting ground troops, and naval bombardment. Worse yet, the sailors in question were not even shielded from combat. The vessels were frequently deployed near the Vietnamese coast, making them susceptible to enemy attacks at any time. The majority of sailors were forced to witness war directly, along with its excruciating risk and stress. And if living on board a ship wasn't already depressing enough, there was also the constant fear of enemy fire, which made life even more tense and nauseating. Without further ado, let's start off with the aircraft carriers. During the two-decade war, the United States Navy aircraft carriers were crucial in many military operations. And no, they weren't just for transporting planes such as the F-4 Phantom and A-1 Skyraider, as their name suggests. They also provided close air support for ground troops, served as platforms for airstrikes, and conducted reconnaissance missions. And don't even get me started on carriers like the Douglas Sky Warrior, equipped with electronic countermeasure equipment. It was deployed to disrupt North Vietnamese defenses, jam enemy radar and communications, and protect U.S. aircraft from surface-to-air missiles, ASMs. But among the scores of carriers deployed in the war, one that really stood out the most was the USS Enterprise, CNV-65. That was deeply involved in air operations and served as a launch platform for various combat aircraft. Its operational prowess was also demonstrated during the Cuban Missile Crisis, where it was rapidly deployed to enforce a naval quarantine around Cuba. Renowned for being the world's first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the USS Enterprise was commissioned in 1961. It was designed to protect American power worldwide, with its nuclear propulsion allowing it to operate without refueling for extended periods. Cool, right? We've barely touched the surface. Built by Newport News Shipbuilding, the USS Enterprise used 60,923 tons of steel, 1,507 tons of aluminum, 230 miles of pipe and tubing, and 1,700 tons of welding rods. It featured a unique 8-reactor propulsion system, making it the only carrier with more than 2 reactors. This gave the Enterprise exceptional operational endurance. Additionally, the steel provided the necessary strength to endure combat conditions, while the aluminum helped reduce the speed's overall weight. What about the hull? Modified from the Fortis Steel class design with the inclusion of a more cruiser-like structure, the Enterprise also had enhanced speed and maneuverability. Measuring 1,123 feet in length, the USS Enterprise was the longest carrier in the U.S. Navy. It had a waterline beam of 132.8 feet, a draft of 39 feet, and a displacement of 94,781 tons. The flight deck covered 4.47 acres, with a width of 252 feet, while the hangar bay spanned 5 acres. So with all of that in mind, it's easy to say the Enterprise's design focused on speed, robustness, and versatility to both launch and recover aircraft efficiently. The fact that it also had a nuclear propulsion system that allowed extensive deployments without need for refueling was yet another boost. Plus, there was no slouch in the armament department. At first, the USS Enterprise had limited defense weaponry due to its high construction costs. However, over time, it was equipped with various weapon systems, including NATO's Sea Sparrow missile launchers and Phalanx CIWS mounts for close-in defense against missile and aircraft. It also featured advanced radar systems, such as the AN/SPS-32 and the AN/SPS-33, which enhanced its capability to track multiple airborne targets. Alas, the design, for all its charm, also had its drawbacks. To start with, the complexity of its 8-reactor system required extensive maintenance and was a significant power drain on the ship's electrical systems. And don't even get me started on how high the construction and operational costs sadly led to the cancellation of additional ships in this class. So you see, while the USS Enterprise CNV-65 was a groundbreaking naval vessel that significantly influenced naval operations thanks to its advanced design and nuclear propulsion, it came at a high financial and maintenance cost, the latter of which finally led to its eventual cancellation. Moving on, can we all agree that in the Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin became a critical battleground? There, U.S. naval ships played a multitude of roles, including supporting ground operations and maintaining naval superiority. On the gun line of the Gulf of Tonkin, destroyers and destroyer escorts were frequently stationed to provide essential fire support for ground troops. These ships were tasked with bombarding enemy positions, often guided by target information relayed from ground forces or spotter planes. They would unleash their firepower on designated targets, aiming to disrupt and destroy North Vietnamese military operations, and also protect the fleet from airborne threats with their advanced missile systems. Nighttime on the waterfront can get pretty scary, even more so on the seas. Given that operations needed light, sailors often required the firing of illumination rounds, lighting up the night sky to reveal enemy positions. These rounds not only helped in identifying targets, but also served to harass North Vietnamese forces, depriving them of rest and creating a constant state of vigilance. Why, you might ask? Well, it all boils down to psychology. Just imagine the sounds of hundreds of shots piercing your ears in the middle of the night. The continuous bombardment and the threat of sudden attacks wear down the enemy's morale and capabilities. But don't take this to mean smooth sailing for the US Navy. The ships on the gun line frequently changed locations to avoid becoming easy targets for North Vietnamese coastal defenses. Missions like the Linebacker night strikes brought US ships perilously close to the coast, making them vulnerable to retaliatory fire from coastal gun emplacements. These missions were extremely hazardous, with ships often coming under heavy fire. Near misses were common, and some ships were hit, resulting in damage, injuries, and casualties among the crew. However, despite the dangers, the relentless efforts of these naval vessels were crucial in supporting the military objectives in Vietnam during one of the most challenging conflicts in modern history. Take, for instance, the USS Maddox, DD-731. Commissioned on June 2, 1944, as an Allen M. Sumner-class destroyer, the Maddox initially served in World War II, where it received 4 battle stars, and in the Korean War, where it got 6, long before its notable involvement in the Vietnam War. But primarily from high-tensile steel, the compact and streamlined design of the USS Maddox allowed for quick movement and rapid response to threats. And being smaller than the aircraft carriers, the destroyer had the advantage of being less detectable and being more agile in all kinds of combat scenarios. Featuring a design optimized for anti-submarine warfare and high-speed maneuvers, its robust structure crafted from steel allowed it to endure significant damage, but nothing too crazy. It was a ship after all. Armament-wise, though, the Maddox was impressive. It was armed with a range of offensive and defensive weapons, including 5-inch 38 caliber guns that were effective for surface targets and shore bombardments, and 40mm and 20mm anti-aircraft guns, serving defense against aerial threats. It even had torpedoes and depth charges for anti-submarine warfare. In fact, on August 2nd in the Tonkin Gulf, while sailing in international waters, the Maddox was attacked by 3 North Vietnamese motor torpedo boats. During the engagement, the Maddox dodged the torpedoes and disabled 2 of the boats with direct hits. The Maddox's impressive feat ensured no American crew members were killed or injured. One of the most significant advantages of the Maddox was its durability. The ship's robust design enabled it to withstand considerable damage, making it a reliable asset in hostile environments. Take, for instance, the Tonkin Gulf incident on August 2nd. It didn't even sustain any significant damage. Its amazing durability was a testament to the solid engineering practices of the era. ensuring that the vessel could sustain and continue operations even after taking hits. Additionally, the Maddox was highly versatile. It was equipped for multiple roles, including anti-submarine and anti-aircraft warfare, like we talked about earlier, which allowed it to adapt to various combat scenarios. This versatility was crucial in the dynamic and often unpredictable theater of the Vietnam War, where the ability to switch between different operational roles often made a world of difference in mission successes. Whether it was engaging in underwater or aerial threats, the Maddox was a formidable presence on the battlefield. Finally, another major pro was the ship's speed and maneuverability. You see, the Maddox was capable of high-speed operations, which were essential for both evasion and engagement. Its engineered ability to move swiftly and maneuver effectively ensured the Maddox could keep pace with faster, more agile vessels and evade enemy attacks when necessary. However, despite these advantages, the Maddox, albeit subjective, had its fair share of drawbacks. Most notably, by the time of the Vietnam War, some of its systems were considered outdated compared to newer vessels. The rapid advancement of naval technology meant that certain aspects of the Maddox design, while state-of-the-art at the time of its construction, had become less effective. This aging technology posed a challenge as the ship's older systems struggled to keep up with the demands of modern warfare. Furthermore, while the ship was sturdy, it was not always robust enough to handle the sophisticated armaments deployed by the North Vietnamese. This vulnerability highlighted a significant con in its design, as it required constant updates and adaptations to maintain its defensive capabilities. Okay, so we've talked about a heavy-hitting destroyer and, ideally, one of the most significant carriers in the war. But was there any other vessel class that helped the Navy perform to the best of its ability? Well, to put it simply, the answer is yes. Patrol boats, most especially the Patrol Craft Fast, PCF, or Swift boats, if you may, were essential components of the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam War. Constructed by Seaward Seacraft and later by other boat builders following Navy specifications, they were designed to navigate the shallow and narrow waterways of Vietnam, providing flexibility and speed in challenging environments. But while the main mission objective of the Swift boats was to provide the Navy with a fast boat that could patrol many miles of the river shores, it all started when Seaward Seacraft of Berwick, Louisiana, initially known for building water taxis for companies operating oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico, deployed the Swift boats. Recognizing the suitability of these vessels for military use, the U.S. Navy acquired the designs from Seaward Seacraft and commissioned the company to create modified drawings. These enhancements included the addition of a gun tub, ammo lockers, bunkers, and a small galley to adapt the water taxis for combat situations. With these enhanced plans, the Navy sought bids from various boat builders before ultimately choosing Seaward Seacraft to construct the boats. The resulting Swift boats were shallow draft vessels made of aluminum. Initially, their primary role was to patrol coastal areas, but as the Vietnam War progressed, they became an integral part of the Brown Water Navy. They intercepted Viet Cong movements of arms and munitions, transported South Vietnamese forces, and inserted SEAL teams for counterinsurgency, COIN operations. But if there's one thing to love about the vessel, it has to be the fact that their shallow draft allowed them to navigate the intricate river systems of Vietnam effectively, thus making them invaluable for operations of the Mekong Delta and other riverine environments. This was what crowned the Navy's efforts to control the waterways and support ground operations during the Vietnam War. Measuring 50 feet in length, with a 13-foot beam, Swift boats were made primarily of aluminum, a choice driven by the need for lightweight yet durable construction. Speaking of the former, the lightweight nature of aluminum was crucial for achieving high speeds in shallow and narrow water waves, and given how aluminum also provided resistance to corrosion, it was perfect for handling the humid, saltwater conditions of Vietnam. But before we go into its armaments, you might want to jot down the points of aluminum, because spoiler alert, it did have its shortcomings. A pretty major one. Okay. So the armaments of the Swift boats were tailored for versatility and effectiveness in both offense and defensive operations, right? They typically featured twin 50 caliber machine guns mounted in a turret above the pilot house, and an 81mm mortar combined with another 50 caliber machine gun on the rear deck. Additionally, some were also equipped with M60 machine guns positioned at the bow. This neat configuration allowed the PCFs to engage enemy forces effectively while providing suppressive fire during troop insertions and extractions. So yeah, it was pretty handy. The Swift boats, as their name implies, performed admirably under the demanding conditions of the Vietnam War. They were rapid, and the added maneuverability features gave them some unique advantages. Not a lot of vessels at the time could both engage and disengage quickly from hostile encounters. It was usually one for the other, or none at all. But hey, remember when I told you to keep its aluminum construction in mind? Well guys, while the PCF's aluminum hulls were durable, they offered extremely limited protection against heavy gunfire and rocket-propelled grenades. Plus, you'd be hard-pressed to say the boat's relatively small size didn't restrict the number of personnel and the amount of equipment they could transport, which sometimes limited their operational effectiveness. Overall, being on a Navy ship during the Vietnam War must have been a complex and demanding experience. While the US Navy's ships during the Vietnam War were marvels of engineering designed to meet the most diverse and demanding challenges of the conflict, the sailors were certainly exposed to the harsh realities of combat. From the gargantuan aircraft carriers to the portable patrol boats, each vessel used by the Navy was pivotal to the overall objectives. But just as their design, construction, and armor birthed a multitude of pros, so did they showcase nail-biting limitations. And that, folks, is why if you want to get a taste of fascinating history of military operations and the incredible machines that make them possible, then this is the best place to be. So, make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it, comment on your favorite vessel class, subscribe to our channel, and smash the bell icon to be in the loop of any of our upcoming videos. You really don't want to miss it.